Good morning, everyone. We're continuing here in the laws of KASHRUS of Rabbi Yamin Forst, and we began the Hilchos Pas Akum, the laws of the bread that is cooked by the non-Jew. Let's describe the difference between bread baked by the non-Jew and food that is cooked by the non-Jew. Yesh l'das, we have to know ki af she'isser pas akum daimel isser bishul akum, even though that bread which is baked by a non-Jew is similar to the prohibition of food cooked by the non-Jew. They're both food products that are cooked by goyim, and that makes it aser. One happens to be with bread, the other one is with a food dish. Nevertheless, in each one there's going to be a leniency, and in each one there's going to be a stringency. Ketzad, what's the case? In the laws of bishul akum, the food dishes that are cooked by a non-Jew, there are several qualifications that must be met. Number one, it has to be what's called tafshil chashiv. It has to be something like a respectable type of a meal, as we will see. It has to be something that's so good, it could be on the king's table, the president's table, a chashiv, a person's table. And so too, it cannot be something that can be eaten raw. But if it can be eaten raw, there's no prohibition of cooking it. Kamoshi Yisbar says it like I'm going to explain later on in the chapters upcoming. But when it comes to the bread that is cooked by a non-Jew, even if it's a low-based bread, it's like just hard brown bread or something of that, it's still going to be asur. Because Chazal said anything that's called bread is prohibited. Even if on the king's table you wouldn't find, broken shards of pita or the like, nevertheless it's pas, it's bread, you're not allowed to eat it. Nimsa shechamura pas akum mi bishul akum. So you see here that what? That the bread baked by a non-Jew has more of a stringency than the food which is cooked by a non-Jew. But there's also the opposite. Yesh kula b'pas akum. There's a leniency in pas akum in the bread. She'ekilo harbe b'isser pas akum, because we find that they were very makel. They were very lenient when it comes to the bread baked by a non-Jew. Like we mentioned yesterday, this is not a prohibition that all of the Jewish people were able to handle, and therefore and they said therefore that to eat the baker's bread of a non-Jew, not the personal bread from his house, but if he has a bakery, Wonder Bakery, where they're producing the white bread that has an OU on there, even though that it's bread that is baked by a non-Jew, nevertheless you'd be allowed to eat it. Kamoshi Yisbar, like we're going to explain. Aval iser bishul akum hispashi b'chol mokum, but the prohibition of cooking of the food cooked by a non-Jew, that's something that applies everywhere. Therefore we're not makel, we're not lenient. And therefore there is no difference whether it was an individual goy who cooked in their house, or it was a restaurant, a non-kosher restaurant that cooked in their house. It's all going to be asur. I'm going to explain all this later on coming up. You should know further, wherever we talk about the permissibility of eating the bread that was baked by a non-Jew, or the food that was cooked by a non-Jew, hakavana, it means that's only when you know for sure they didn't add any asa, anything prohibited into that food over there. But if you're not sure whether or not some kind of tray food got put in there as well, you'll never be allowed to eat the bread of a non-Jew that was cooked by the bakery, nor his food, because the way of bakers is la'arav markivim asurim. They often put in ingredients that are not kosher, b'seich pitam, into their bread, v'tafshileim, and into their food as well. And this would really be the great misnomer that people have, that they can go and eat food that they hold is kosher style, at a non-kosher restaurant. Because if you're going to eat, as even we mentioned previously, if you're going to eat the salads, you have to worry about bugs. They're not checking the salads for bugs. But let's say you say, I only eat fish out at the restaurant. Do you know what that fish is cooked with? Do you know what else was cooked in that pan? Maybe they just finished cooking a lobster in the pan that you now are eating your salmon fillet from. And that means that all of the juice of that lobster and all the other treif ingredients that are in that restaurant end up in that piece of fish. So you're eating food that is very much cooked by a non-Jew, and it also has ingredients in there that are non-Jewish. Even the bread, how do you know that the bread that you're going to eat at the restaurant has only kosher ingredients? There's no hechsher. There is no hechsher on that restaurant, and therefore a person who plays very loosely with the laws of kashrus in that place has to be careful to make sure that they're actually, when they say that I eat kosher food, they have to make sure that they're actually eating kosher food in the ingredients, and also the prohibition of bishul akum, of eating food that was cooked by a non-Jew. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.